the guitar breaks, and it goes into this sort of little motif for a bit, which has this descending blues influence riff, which a certain band that I like very much do so well. Hey everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Audiophiles. My name's John, his name is Andy. Arresting bent up to the jug again, with sheets and pills invading all those stills. In a hovel of a bed, I will scream in vain. Oh please, Miss Lane, leave me with some pain. More on that later. But first, we have a track to listen to, selected by Andy. Andy, what have you got for the class today?
Well, as recently promised to you, and probably far too long since our last one, we are revisiting Black Sabbath in the form of a track, probably my favorite track by them. It is one called Into the Void. So, have you ever heard this song before or of this song? Okay, great, 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 great. Well, please go off into the void, if you will. Give this thing a go and come back. Let us know what you've made of it.
Will do. Okay, nice start. We've got this sort of I don't know, this riff of impending doom, and it's kind of like trudging like a Boris Karloff monster. um yeah, it's like a slow, you know, danger creeping forward. I like the way the bass is really propping it up there, and the man on the drums is very subdued and quite efficient at the moment. It's got a nice sound to it. Some nice fills. We get this change up here, obviously. You can hear what I can hear. I like this. It's a really nice sort of groove to this, bit of swing. Sounds great. Yeah, the rhythm section are doing fantastic. Yeah.
Rocket engines burning through so fast, up into the night sky they blast. Through the universe the engines whine. Would it be the end of man and time? Back on earth the flame of life burns low. Everywhere is misery and woe. Pollution kills the air, the land and sea. Man prepares to meet his destiny.
okay, so we've had that first verse, I guess. Ozzy's come in. His voice sounds a little bit thinner than it did on Hand of Doom. And there's like a constant tone to it, so he wasn't really putting forward or expressing on that. Yeah, it's just about rockets, engines burning up fuel, and yeah, so we get this idea of, I don't know, there's some sort of turmoil and wanted to escape into the void. Um, Interesting. And that little break at the end of the verse, that descending, do 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 do. I mean, I kind of know it from Led Zeppelin, but I guess it's a blues thing, influence. But this obviously has a much more sort of chuggy sound to it. Yeah, good stuff.
Rocket engines burning fuel so fast, hopping through the black sky so fast, burning metal through the atmosphere. Earth remains in worry, hate and fear, with the hateful battles raging on. Rockets flying to the glowing sun, through the empires of eternal void, freedom from the final suicide. Freedom fighters sent us to the sun. Escape from brainwashment and pollution. Leave the earth to all its sin and hate. Find another world where freedom waits.
Obviously, this has picked up a pace now. It's almost like galloping motif, which I kind of associate with later acts, like Iron Maiden or whatever. Not being an expert in this sort of music, so this is clearly an influence on them. Um, but yeah, the drums it's almost like there's two kits going on in each channel, and it gives this real urgency. And as if you're racing towards something that probably isn't good. Really effective though. Sounds great. All the 30 seconds and then we're back into the original motif.
Past the stars in fields of ancient void, through the shields of darkness where they find love upon the land, a world unknown, where the sons of freedom make their home. Leave the earth to Satan and his slaves, lead them to their future in their graves. Make a home where love is there to stay, peace and happiness in every day.
I can't let that go. That is so much Whole Lot of Love. That's hilarious. That double hit, that dun, dun, And it even had that sort of weird panning sort of fade to that higher guitar motif. And it had the sort of that staggered, like that bottom fill when it comes back in, which really I love, probably the best section of that song. And they did it really well. It's great. It's just like they put a little bit of a um, tribute or whatever into it. It sounds fantastic. Apologies. That's strange. Yeah, this is really good actually. I like the fact that they managed to the guitar was operating quite a narrow band of real estate, and then the second half of it, the final third, he moved up the neck and got more expressive. So that was really cool. Yeah, overall, this is a really good sound. I need to listen to it again to really appreciate it, I think. But first listen, I found it very enjoyable. Um, you could kind of almost see it's going towards elements which would then become sort of that sort of more metal sort of Black Sabbath. Um, but yeah, this is up my street, definitely. Yeah, I enjoyed this. Need to find out some more. Let's go back and rip it up with Andy.
All right, back from the void. What did you make of this jam, John?
Okay, so the opening riff has that impending doom that's expressed by a shuffling fiend from a 1930s Boris Karloff flick. Um, this is clumsy sutra work on a shambling apparition. There's not immediate danger; it's slowly inching its way towards you.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah, gotta
and I
outpace
really,
the zombie.
yeah, and I really like. All you have to do is outpace the other person. You
Yeah,
don't have to
that's
outpace
true.
the
Yeah,
zombie.
yeah,
I like the way that the bass props it up expertly. It really
yeah.
does. And the drums are very well, as I mentioned, very subdued and really efficient, especially compared to like Hand of Doom's the only other thing I
Yeah.
know to compare it of. Um, just as I'm thinking this, he fills in some lovely. He throws in some lovely fills, just to
Yeah.
remind me. So this trudging motif continues as the mist coalesce till around 1:15, where we switch grooves into something with more sort of motion, purpose, a shuffling no more. So Ozzy comes in with something about rocket engines burn fuel so fast. So this is not the void I was expecting. I foresaw some sort of bottomless pit surrounded with the aforementioned wispy dry ice, and maybe a passing tribe of cannibals or some volcano worshipping natives. But this is a celestial morass. Something about the end of man and time, I catch. So there's kind of like an existential angle to this. Um, Ozzy's voice here is a little bit, it's a bit thinner. If I think of what I heard of Hand of Doom, I really liked his voice in that. And when I think of what I know later in his career, I really don't like his voice in that. And then this is, it's not that, but it's not that either. And it's not even
Mm.
in between. It's closer to the first one. But there is this like, there's a constant tone to his voice through this verse. Um, I wouldn't say it's monotone, but it doesn't seem to me to really sort of peaks and troughs. It's more like you're getting through this, as it were. And he rattles through the verse quite quickly. I catch mentions of earth, pollution, misery, and woe, and it's about battles and an empire, and then final suicide. And here the guitar breaks. And it goes into this sort of little motif for a bit, which has this descending blues influence riff which a certain band that I like very much do so well, and harness that power of that sort of bluesy thing. Obviously, this totally has a lot more chug to it, though. Diesel powered. Um, and then we get a switch with a skip into double time, and it has that racing quality now to the music, which I would associate with kind of later heavy metal bands. Again, I'm talking of a surface knowledge here. I'm not a fan of Iron Maiden, but I know of some of their tracks, and that's like the first one that spoke to mind. That sort of galloping motif.
Uh-huh.
So this is clearly an inspiration and an influence on later stuff. You can see where they picked it up, because you don't get anything like that really in Led Zeppelin. Maybe in Presence, but no, not really. Um,
Mhm.
there's something about Freedom Fighters Into the Sun. So this, along with all the other stuff before, it has this kind of proggy aspect to it as well. This sort of skipping from like time signature to time signature,
Yeah.
and some of these sort of phrases I'm catching, and sort of motifs, visually. This is an expansion of. You get this idea of this inner fighting on Earth, and our futures away with the stars or whatever. It's kind of like that sort of sci-fi thing that you would get with Hawkwind or something like that as
Yeah.
well.
Yeah.
It's just really interesting. And again, not what I expect from Black Sabbath.
Sure.
Where are the burning crosses and the headless bats? Anyway, but as I said before, my only previous experience, apart from having to do with Black Sabbath, is their later career nonsense, and it really was nonsense from my point of view. But anyway, so the drummer at this point has really picked up the pace and he's driving along, and it sounds really. It almost sounds like it's two drummers, because you've got the beats going in both channels and they're slightly different in tone. So it does sound like two different things going on at the same time. And it really feels like it gives the impression that we're racing towards something. And just as she comes to that impression, it just fucking stops. So, the horse refuses the first fence and over you go. Um,
Mhm.
so it cuts abruptly to this chugging riff, and we're back with that change of time into the initial sort of music for the first verse section. So after that galloping interlude, when you hear it again the second time, you really appreciate the sort of the swing and the groove to it even more than I did the first time for the
Mhm.
first verse. So the rhythm section's did a fantastic job there. Um, Ozzy rattles through the words again, talking about ancient voids and darkness and freedom and peace and happiness. It may be my imagination. It may be just that I'm listening to it better. But I think he's slightly more animated in his delivery on the second time round than the first time. It might even be exactly the same, it's just my perception. But I don't know. And then the guitar goes back into that sort of bluesy descendant and then starts to mess around. Um, and for me, and many people will hate me for saying this, but they do take their take on an early Led Zeppelin jam. Um, so the rhythm section lays down this fantastic groove, and the guitar finally saunters up the neck of the guitar, because he's been in a very narrow part of real estate in terms of
Yeah.
the sound. It's very consistent. But then he leaves behind all the gloom and doom and the thick sound. It's almost like he's reaching for the stars or whatever, or escaping the atmosphere, going for the bright lights and the high notes. The bass is still really deep and chugging.
Mhm.
As I say, very sort of, diesel engine. And but the abandon on the drums is becoming more expressive at this point. There's some really nice tom works and all these different little tones from the toms. Sounds really nice, popping away. We get some lovely guitar phrasing, and at one point, at the 5 minute mark, it just does a very simple but repeated motif, goes round about 6 times or something, and you have a real bouncing hi hat to it, and it's great. And then we get uh, basically their version of the break. Also say breakdown. It's the break back into section of Whole Lot of Love. Unbelievable. It's that double hit, that giant double hit with the drums going duh duh, and it starts. I think that's but after about the fifth time, you even get that in between, and even that. has that weird sort of panning, slightly echoing down sort of aspect to it, which Led Zeppelin has as well. And then the drummer comes back in with that sort of stuttered, staggered, just like Bono, which is one of my favourite bits of that whole song.
Yeah.
And they do a great job, and it's just really funny. It's only like 20 seconds, but it's just really funny. That made me grin. But it still sounds like them. It doesn't sound like a Led Zeppelin tribute act. It's still got
Yeah.
Black Sabbath about it, but it's just really funny that they would think to do that. And then they go back just as I say that we remind you that it is them because you go back into that the guitar wails for a bit to the previous melody and then it just disappears the whole song like it's just been beamed up by Scotty. God, back to the mothership. So yeah, I really enjoyed this. I could see in this how where they could go in terms of that sort of heavier metal sound. That some of
Yeah.
that is in there, but there's also lots in there from stuff from before. So I really like the sound of this.
Yeah, yeah, I'm glad you liked it, as much as you did. Yeah, man, I agree with a lot of what you said about their latter catalog, but those first three albums by Sabbath are really solid pieces of work. And I'm glad I could bring another track from one of those albums to this channel because, as you mentioned, we did Hand of Doom, which is from the Paranoid album, and now a lot of the band stuff that we covered, generally biographical stuff and things like that, are in that episode. So I'm just going to kind of focus on this track, this album, and this little like time for the band. Because we'll probably do some other stuff from them, at least one of these three albums, down the road in the future. But if you want to check out that Hand of Doom episode, I will link it down in the description field below for you guys to check out. But yeah, let's get into Black Sabbath Into the Void. So yeah, Into the Void, it features as the closing track on Black Sabbath's third album, Masters of Reality. It was released, the album was on August 6, 1971 by Vertigo Records. And the album Masters of Reality is regarded by some critics as the foundation of stoner rock and sludge metal. And you can hear a lot of that in this. This is definitely their big weed album, for sure. Produced by Roger Bain, who also produced the band's prior two albums. Master of Reality was recorded at Island Studios in London from February to April of 71. This was to be Bain's final collaboration with Black Sabbath as guitarist Tony Iommi took over production for the band's next several albums. Drummer Bill Ward explained, previously, we didn't have a clue what to do in the studio and relied heavily on Roger. But this time we were a lot more together, understood what was involved, and were more opinionated on how things should be done. On the tracks Children of the Grave, Lord of this World, and Into the Void, Iommi downtuned his guitar 1.5 steps in an effort to reduce string tension, thus making the guitar less painful for him to play. The pain was a result of a factory accident years earlier in which he had the tips of two of his fingers severed completely off. The downtuning also helped the guitarist produce what he called a bigger, heavier sound. Geezer Butler also downtuned his bass guitar to match Iommi. It helped with the sound too, Butler explained to Guitar for the Practicing Musician in 1994. Then it got to the point where we were tuned even lower to make it easier vocal wise. But Ozzy would then then sing higher, so it sort of defeated the purpose. In the 2013 biography of the band Black Sabbath, Symptom of the Universe, Mike Wall writes that the Sabbath sound took a plunge into even greater darkness, bereft even of reverb, leaving their sound as dry as old bones dug up from some desert burial plot. The finished music's brutish force would so alarm the critics they would punish Sabbath in print for being blatantly thuggish, purposefully mindless, creepy, and obnoxious. 20 years later, groups like the Smashing Pumpkins, Soundgarden, and particularly Nirvana would excavate the same heavy, heaving lung sound and be rewarded with critical garlands. So interesting how that would come to be. In the liner notes of the 1998 live album Reunion, drummer Ward commented that Master of Reality was an exploratory album. Ward elaborated in a 2016 interview with Metal Hammer magazine. On the first album, we had 2 days to do everything and not much more time for Paranoid. But now we have to take our time and try out different things. We all embrace the opportunity. Tony threw in a classical guitar parts. Geezer's bass was virtually doubled in power. I went for bigger bass drums, also experimenting with overdubs, and Ozzy was so much better. But this was just the first time we didn't have gigs booked in and could just focus on making the album a landmark. In 2013, Mojo magazine called Master of Reality the sound of a band becoming increasingly comfortable in their studio surroundings. Aomi believes the band might have become too comfortable, however, telling Guitar World in '92, during Master of Reality, we started getting more experimental and began taking too much time to record. Ultimately, I think it really confused us. Sometimes I think I'd really like to go back to the way we recorded the first two albums. I've always preferred just going into the studio and playing without spending a lot of time rehearsing or getting sounds. So that's a really interesting quote, just in how it is sort of the polar opposite of what was it Ward or Geezer had said earlier. I believe it was Ward about having more time to experiment and do more things. And Naomi's like, no, just throw us in the deep end and let us, get done in 2 days. Interesting, different opinions from artists in the same band. The song Into the Void was especially problematic, with Aomi saying that in the same interview, we tried recording Into the Void in a couple different studios because Bill just couldn't get it right. Whenever that happened, he would start believing that he wasn't capable of playing the song at all. He'd say, to hell with it, I'm not doing this. There was one track like that on every album, and Into the Void was the most difficult one on Master of Reality. In his autobiography, Iron Man, My Journey Through Heaven and Hell with Black Sabbath, Iommi describes the difficulty Osbourne also experienced recording the vocals. It has this slow bit, but then the riff where Osbourne comes in is very fast. Osbourne had to sing really rapidly. Rocket engines burning fuel so fast, up in the night sky they blast. Quick words like that. Geezer had written all the words out for him. Seeing him try was hilarious. I can only imagine Ozzy trying to rapidly get these words out. Master of Reality peaked at number 5 on the UK albums chart and number 8 in the United States. It eventually sold 2 million copies in the US. Despite the album's commercial success, it was viewed with disdain by contemporary music critics. In The Village Voice, our old buddy Robert Christgau called it a dim-witted, a moral exploitation. Please, Robert, clutch your pearls a little harder, would you please? Rolling.
Yeah, he also then jumped on top of the table and lifted up his petticoats, going, "Thomas!"
Yes, exactly. Rolling Stone magazine's Lester Bangs described it as monotonous and hardly an improvement over its predecessor. In 1994, Master of Reality was ranked number 28 in Colin Larkin's top 50 heavy metal albums. Larkin described it as Sabbath's first real international breakthrough and a remarkable piece of work. In Music Hound Rock, the Essential Album Guide 1999, authors Gary Graff and Daniel Dirkholtz described the album as a brilliant skull crusher. In 2001, Q included it in their list of the 50 heaviest albums of all time, calling it malevolent, casting Black Sabbath as a Titanic-style house band on the eve of Armageddon, cranking it as the bombs drop. A critic for the magazine cited it as the most cohesive record for the band in the first of the band's first 3 albums. In 2003, Rolling Stone, in 2003, Rolling Stone, I'm assuming without the input of the aforementioned Lester Bangs, ranked the album number 298 in their list of the 500 greatest albums of all time, 300 in 2012 revised list, and then 234 in a 2020 revised list. I don't understand how the maths either, John. But either way, it's been ranked a really good album three different times over, 8, 10, 15 years. They described the album as representing the greatest sludge metal band of all time in its prime. The same magazine also ranked the album 34th on its 100 greatest metal albums of all time. Billy Corgan considered Masters of Reality the album that spawned grunge. And John Stanier, drummer of Helmet and Tomahawk, cited the record as one that inspired him to become a musician. In 2013, Sabbath biographer Mick Wall praised Iommi's ability to incorporate more neat riffs and sudden unexpected time changes in one song than most bands would contemplate on an entire album. This track, Into the Void, has been listed as a favorite song by some of heavy metal's most notable performers. James Hetfield from Metallica lists Into the Void as his favorite Black Sabbath song. Eddie Van Halen has listed the song's main riff as one of his all-time favorites. And Washington, D.C. hardcore punk band Void took their name from the song. Soundgarden took the song and converted it, replacing the original lyrics with words of protest by Chief Seattle, which fit the meter of the song. And at the 35th annual Grammy Awards, they appropriately named Into the Void, parenthetically Seattle, received a nomination for Best Metal Performance. Now, these lyrics. Rocket engines burning fuel so fast, up into the night sky they blast. Through the universe, the engines whine. Could it be the end of man and time? Back on Earth, the flame of life burns low. Everywhere is misery and woe. Pollution kills the air, the land and sea. Man prepares to meet his destiny. Yeah, rocket engines burning fuel so fast. Up into the black sky so vast. Burning metal through the atmosphere. Earth remains in worry, hate, and fear. With the hateful battles raging on, rockets flying to the glowing sun. Through the empires of eternal void, freedom from the final suicide. Freedom fighters sent out to the sun. Escape from brainwashed minds and pollution. Leave the earth to all its sin and hate. Find another world where freedom waits. Yeah, past the stars and fields of ancient void, through the shields of darkness where they find love upon a land, a world unknown, where the sons of freedom make their home. Leave the earth to Satan and his slaves. Leave them to their future in the grave. Make a home where love is there to stay. Peace and happiness in every day. Now, this is a real devil worshiping. It just blows my mind. I'm being facetious. It blows my mind that you could read these, yeah, you hear the sound and it's a little dark, but you read these lyrics and it's fuck Satan and the people that worship. Leave the evildoers back there. Let's start anew in the name of peace and love. And people are still being like, yep, these are the sign of the devil. 666. Blows my mind, man. But yeah, Into the Void, as you probably imagine from those lyrics, tells about a man who flees from Earth to find a new home in space because humanity's polluted and their hate has made the planet, uninhabitable. So they're off to start anew. So there you go. Into the Void by Black Sabbath. I'm really glad you like this one, John. Good stuff, man.
Yeah, had a really nice sound to it.
Excellent, excellent. And like you say, I really love being able to listen to a song and in it hear, or a band for that matter, in it hear the acts that inspired it, but also because of where it is in time, hear the acts that it inspired. So you know that it's just sort of like, it's not a pastiche, but it's the next iteration of, that will then lead to the next iterations of. And it's just a fun little, it fits right into the timeline, you know what I mean, of rock and roll or hard rock and metal. And you're right, like this would indicate where metal would go, but look, it indicated, as Billy said, where grunge would go with the Pumpkins and Soundgarden and Nirvana and myriad other bands that aren't metal, but still want to incorporate that dirtier sound, heavier sound, being like, hey man, those first three albums totally, inspired this sound, or this track in particular inspired that sound, or this album. So yeah, it's from a historical standpoint, it's really cool if you're into that kind of thing. So really appreciate you
I,
giving us a
I
listen. Oh, go ahead, John.
was going to say quickly, yeah, and I always forget how early they are. When I think of like Sabbath starting, I think of like sort of 74, 75, but it's just 70 what, 70,
Yeah,
71.
71,
Is that,
third album. So it's,
yeah,
you know what I mean? You're talking about late 60s when this stuff was kind of being, stirred around and
yeah.
congealed into something. So yeah, yeah, really, really cool stuff. I'm really glad you like this one, John. And guys out there in the listening audience, please let us know what you thought of Into the Void by Black Sabbath. If there's other stuff that we should listen to, I'm sure there is, given their huge discography. Please feel free to shout it down in the comments field below. I will probably be continue to pluck one or two more from this trilogy of opening albums by them. But if there's other stuff that you think redeems them from their later catalog, which John and I sort of raise our eyebrow at, feel free to shout it out. We'll give it a listen if neither of us have heard it. And please feel free to share any other songs or acts you'd like us to check out down in the comments field below, and like, share, and or subscribe if you haven't done any or all of those things. Goes a long way to help us here at the channel. Only costs you a couple clicks, and we really do appreciate it. And all that out of the way, hopefully John and I will catch all y'all in growing numbers on the next installment of the Audiophiles. We'll see you later, guys.